Oliver was in a good mood today, as he had reconciled with his fiancée, Brenda. He hadn't actually argued with her at all, but Brenda had a tendency to take offence and throw tantrums over trivial matters. But yes, it is a common trait amongst privileged and spoiled individuals. Despite her flaws, Oliver was deeply in love with her and overlooked these unpleasant aspects of her character like any man in love would. While passing by a flower stall adorned with colourful lights, Oliver decided to stop his SUV and purchase the most luxurious bouquet. After all, Brenda had refined taste and high standards, so the bouquet from the supposedly guilty Oliver had to match her status. However, his mood quickly soured when he couldn't find his car upon leaving the store. He was not amused by such tricks. "Ah, where's my car? Where the hell is this?" he shouted at a nearby road worker who was painting something. "Didn't you see the sign? No parking here. Your car's been taken to the impound yard," the worker replied. "I was only gone for 5 minutes. How could they do this? My fiancé is waiting for me at the restaurant. I can't be late, and on top of this, I have left my phone in the car." "Don't get so mad. The parking lot is around the corner. Pay the fine, go back to your fiancé. That's all," the worker retorted, growing irritated. Oliver didn't respond. Every minute was precious to him. Why was he having such bad luck today? Holding the bouquet tightly under his arm, he ran. When he finally reached the impound lot, he rushed to the man on duty. "You have my car here, a black SUV. Here are the documents. I need to pick it up right away. I'm late for an important meeting." "No problem," replied the sleepy parking lot attendant. "Pay the fine and take your car, but I only accept cash." Writing out a receipt and searching for change to Oliver seemed to take an eternity. "You can leave the change yourself. I'm really rushing," said Oliver. Satisfied with this turn of events, the guard obligingly showed him where Oliver's car was parked. The lot where the cars were stored was untidy and dilapidated, indicating the guard's lack of diligence. The cars were haphazardly positioned, and the rear door of Oliver's car was left open. "Why is the car door open?" he asked the guard. "I don't know. Maybe you forgot to close it. There were no strangers here. You can check the cameras." The guard answered and suddenly added fearfully, "There's someone inside. Look." At this moment, a hand covered in blood pressed against the glass, leaving a bloody trace. A heartbreaking, inhuman scream followed. It was a woman. Oliver rushed to the car and opened the back door. What he saw shocked him, leaving him frozen in horror for a few seconds. "Oh, my goodness! There's a woman! She's giving birth!" shouted the guard, peering out from behind Oliver's shoulder. "Help! I'm going to die!" The young girl screamed with all her might before fainting from the pain. "Run! Call an ambulance and bring hot water here," Oliver commanded the guard, frantically searching through the car's medical kit. He found ammonia and used it to revive the woman in labour. Oliver placed a pillow under her head and a clean disposable diaper under her lower body, luckily having a whole pile of them since he often carried his dog in the car. He also had clean sheets and towels, which he had coincidentally picked up from the dry cleaners earlier that day. "Don't be afraid. Breathe. What did the midwives teach you?" "My name is Oliver. What's yours?" He tried to distract the young woman from her fear. "Amy. My name is Amy." She was in labour, screaming and squeezing Oliver's hand with such force that it felt as if something had crunched. Oliver himself cried out in pain, whether from the fright of the stranger's screams or because it was time. A second later the baby's head appeared. Come on, everything will be fine," shouted Oliver, forgetting about his own pain. "Help is on the way." And then the baby was born, a red, defenceless creature with clenched fists. Oliver picked him up, slapped his butt to make him cry, and took his first breath. Then he wrapped the baby in a clean sheet. Oliver thanked God that he had brought an SUV that was so warm and spacious. "It's a boy. You've got a boy," Oliver announced joyfully. Amy smiled, but immediately the agony of terrible, unbearable pain distorted her face again. She cried out, and again the labour began in a wave. Another child was born, also a boy, but only a little smaller. He cried himself and began to wave his tiny hands. Oliver quickly swaddled him too. The babies were silent, warmed in the warmth of the car. Amy lay down without strength, wrapped in the blanket Oliver had offered her. "Thank you. Without your help I'd be lost. My darling sons. I'm so happy that everything's all right. Oh, I'm so thirsty. I can't stand it." Oliver quickly gave her some mineral water. She greedily drank half a bottle and smiled weakly. "I'm sorry I got into your car. The contractions started on the way, and I was carrying a suitcase. I literally didn't understand what I was doing. I saw the car standing there with opened back door, got into the back seat, and then I don't remember anything. I must have blacked out from the pain. And there you are, my hero. Oh, I apologise for getting your car dirty." "Come on. The main thing is that the guys are okay and all alive, and you did a good job. I almost fainted, honestly," laughed Oliver. "How's it going in there?" A guard ran up to them with a belated basin of water. "The ambulance has already arrived. Wow, she gave birth to 2 babies at once." A minute later, a doctor and a paramedic came and carried Amy into the ambulance. Oliver carried the twins, and for some reason, without knowing why, he felt proud of himself, as if they were his children. "There really are no other people's children," he thought. "I'll have to tell Brenda that it's time to become parents." His soul overflowed with joy for Amy and her sons, and of course pride for himself. He did not expect such fearlessness from himself, and firmly decided that he would have at least 3 children. With this news and the desire to share an unusual incident, Oliver went on a date with Brenda. Arriving at the restaurant exactly 2 hours later, he realised that the bride had already left. "Here's a note for you." The waiter handed Oliver a doubled, folded piece of paper. The smile slid off the man's face as soon as he read the message. It read as follows: "How could you? I have been waiting for you for an hour. During that time, I realised that you don't care for me at all. Why would I want such a fiancée? My father has more money, by the way, and you're not that handsome as you think. I'll find someone better. You can be sure of that. Good luck, loser." After reading that, Oliver was finally upset. His strength was gone, and no wonder. It had been a crazy day. Not everyone can handle so many problems at once. For some reason, he didn't want to call Brenda and make excuses. To withstand the onslaught of his fiancée, he needed energy, which he didn't have now. He felt like a dead battery. But Oliver knew what could restore his strength: a faithful friend who was waiting for him at home and a hot bath. Half an hour later, Oliver was at his 2-story house. Anticipating pine aroma and steam, Oliver firstly turned on the sauna, which was in the backyard, and only now he felt how hungry he was. When he went into the house, a fluffy whirlwind came at him with a joyful bark. It was Caesar, Oliver's dog, who had recently turned a year old. He was the most faithful companion to his master. "Well, did you miss me?" Oliver hugged the dog and patted his thick fur. Caesar cheerfully barked and started his tail, then stood on his hind legs and licked the face of his beloved master. A couple of minutes later, the dog was scrabbling at the door with his paw, hinting that he needed to go out to do his doggy business. "Well, go for a walk and I'll make us something to eat," Oliver said tiredly. Since morning there was not a crumb in his mouth. While Caesar ran around the yard and kicked out the neighbour's cat, Oliver quickly made a simple bachelor's dinner: scrambled eggs with bacon and vegetable salad. A good piece of meat with a bone was defrosted for Caesar. "Eat up, my little tramp?" Oliver smiled and placed a full bowl in front of his friend. The dog licked his master's hand in gratitude, which made Oliver feel better. "And you know, my fiancée left me today, and she didn't even let me explain anything." Oliver complained to the dog. "Only you love me sincerely and will never betray me. It doesn't matter if I'm rich or poor, handsome or not. You just love me, and that's all." The dog whimpered and rested his head in Oliver's lap, as if to take away his pain. Caesar had appeared in Oliver's life accidentally. The man found him in a dire state, hungry and cold. He was just a little puppy, unable to crawl and barely making hoarse squeaks. Oliver took him and immediately took him to the vet. The doctor was pessimistic, stating that the newborn was unlikely to survive. However, he prescribed vitamins and antibiotics as a precaution. Oliver did not give up. He carefully took care of the puppy. Within 2 weeks, the puppy began to walk, albeit unsteadily on his stubby legs. In the morning, the phone rang. Oliver jumped up like a stung man. It was 9 a.m., and it was the first time in his life that he had overslept. "Boss, where are you? Why aren't you answering the phone?" His assistant sounded worried. "I had to hold a meeting without you and inform the directors that you were sick. What's wrong? Do you need help?" "Yes, a lot has happened," Oliver replied groggily. "Yesterday, for example, babies were born right in my car. Can you imagine? And then Brenda left me, just like that." "Oh, things are awful," his assistant responded after a brief pause. "And how are you holding up?" "I'm fine. By the way, do you know what a woman after labour can eat? Maybe some treats? You have a daughter after all. I'll ask my wife and send you a list. Who was born, by the way?" His assistant laughed. "2 strong little boys." Oliver reminisced about the babies from the previous day. Suddenly, he felt a strong desire to see Amy and her newborn children. He was also curious to know how the young mother found herself in such a peculiar situation. After receiving the list and purchasing various items, he hurried to the maternity hospital where Amy was taken the day before. The nurses became animated upon seeing him with the large bags. "Oh, what a generous father! And who are you here to see, young man?" the one of them asked. "I'm here to see Amy. She gave birth to twins in my car yesterday," Oliver answered cheerfully, taken aback by the nurse's change in expression. "Are you here to see her?" one of them asked, wide-eyed. "We thought she was a homeless woman, because she didn't have anything with her, not even documents. We had to place her in an overcrowded ward. Why did you let your wife go like that?" Oliver felt uncomfortable under the reproachful gazes of the women. "But she's not my wife, and I'm not a father," he defended himself. "It just happened in my car, and I helped her to give birth." Upon entering the room, he immediately spotted where she was lying. Next to her was an empty bedside table, while the other women had their tables overflowing with food, clothes and baby care items. It was clear that their husbands and relatives had visited them, but no one had visited Amy. She wore a faded hospital gown, and there was only a solitary glass of water on her table. Oliver's heart ached with pity. "Well, hello there, mother heroine," Oliver said, deliberately cheerful, and walked over to her bed where she was laying, with her back turned to the wall. "Wow, Oliver," she rejoiced. "You've come, and all of this is for me? You're crazy. Why did you bring all this?" she said, surprised, but it was evident that she had recently been crying, as her eyes were swollen and flushed. Oliver marvelled at the warmth and simplicity with which Amy greeted him. "That's not all. There are many more things in the car. After all, I'm not a stranger to you and the boys. Why were you crying?" "Just a little bit. I was upset. I was reminiscing about my life, my worthless life. I worked as a dishwasher, earning pennies, and sometimes I couldn't even afford a place to live. I had to sleep at train stations or in homeless shelters. It was scary. I was all alone, and here I see mothers with babies and their happy relatives visiting them. Nobody needs me, Amy sniffed. Your sons need you, Oliver reassured her. That's true, you're right, of course, but we have nowhere to go. My fiancé rejected me. My stepfather kicked me out of the house and said he didn't need any burden. He hung out with his friends and drinks away our belongings. He lives in my mum's apartment. In fact, it was all right while she was alive, but now... Oh, my poor sons. Amy cried bitterly. Oliver had to put his arm around her to comfort her. Listen, I have an idea, Oliver suggested. Let's consider that I've hired you as a manager, and now I'll give you sick leave and maternity leave. Tomorrow, I'll arrange for you to receive a salary card and rent an apartment for you and the boys. Do you agree? Oh! Amy couldn't believe her happiness and stared at Oliver with disbelief. What was said was done. After the hospital, Oliver went to the office where he instructed his assistant to handle Amy's job replacement and payment of her due compensation. Meanwhile, enthusiastic women gathered around Amy's bed. What a man, admired the neighbours in the ward. Amy, hold on to him tightly. Don't let such a generous man slip away. Come on, girls. I can't take advantage of his kindness. It's not fair. I was just hired, she replied modestly. Of course, winked the oldest woman, to which modest Amy only waved her hand and began to look at the presents. The next day, Oliver visited her again to inquire about the health and well-being of the babies. The whole maternity ward was waiting for him, nurses and patients alike, wondering what would happen next. A miracle was taking place before their eyes, as if the audience was in a movie where a rich prince takes a simple shepherdess under his guardianship. Only Oliver and Amy seemed to be oblivious to the curious glances. They were absorbed in their conversation and in the two little babies, who were studying the world around them with amazement. As I had promised, Oliver said, and handed her a bank card and a new smartphone. There should be enough there, so don't deny yourself anything. And if you need more, just say the word. I don't know how to thank you, Amy said, embarrassed. Sometimes it feels like I'm dreaming. I just want to pinch myself. Come on, it doesn't cost me much, Oliver said. People need to be helped. Besides, you and I are already friends, aren't we? Oh, and by the way, I would like to be the godfather to your boys too. What did you name them? Oliver and Thomas, Amy replied. The first in your honour, and the second in honour of my late father. He was a good man, even though he passed away early. Thank you. It's my pleasure, Oliver rejoiced. All right, I have to go now. Take care. I'll come again tomorrow. A crowd of curious people gathered around Amy once again. Amy, if it's not a secret, how much did you get on your card? One of them asked. I haven't looked yet, Amy admitted. She picked up her phone, opened the message from the bank and was stunned. The women came over and looked at the smartphone screen, filled with curiosity. They were all surprised by Oliver's generosity. Wow, that's impressive. With this money, you can live well. Oh, lucky you, Amy. You got such a great man, sighed one of the women. Is he married, by the way? I don't know, said Amy, becoming despondent. In fact, she did like Oliver, but was afraid to show it, thinking he would see her as a gold digger. However, what kind of gold digger am I? Amy thought. I'm a beggar with 2 children. But the thought that Oliver might be married upset her a little. The other women in the ward noticed this and silently returned to their places. They wanted the poor girl to be happy. And in the meantime, Brenda met Marina, the assistant's wife, at a restaurant. Why are you alone without your fiancé? Marina asked. Oh, you don't know yet. I left him. Let him regret it now. Who needs him? A middle-class businessman? Brenda snorted. You shouldn't talk about his business like that. Igor said their company was doing well. They recently got a big order. I think luck turned back to them after that noble deed, Marina said. What noble deed? Brenda asked, intrigued by her ex-fiancé's sudden career rise. Oliver helped a poor woman give birth in his new car. Can you imagine? Twins were born, and he visits her every day. Her name is Amy, as I recall. Marina smiled. Are those his children? Brenda shouted furiously. Why are you shouting? Oliver said the children weren't his, and that he saw her for the first time. But I don't want to discuss this with you. Have a nice day. Marina was astonished and walked away, fearing Brenda's hysterics, because the spoiled rich girl was famous throughout the city with her anger and antics. And Brenda's inflamed brain was already imagining indecent scenarios involving Oliver and that strange woman. And if they're not his children, whose are they? She fumed. That Amy is cleverer than me. What a disgrace! Arrogant Brenda couldn't tolerate such humiliation for herself and immediately rushed to the maternity hospital at full speed to confront Amy. Which one of you is Amy? She shouted as she burst into the room. It's me, Amy replied. You miserable little beggar! Are you trying to steal my fiancé from me? Do you think that by giving birth to your ugly children you'll be happy? You wretch! Try to come near Oliver and I'll ruin you! Brenda yelled furiously. My children are not ugly, and he is not their father. Please leave. I'm not taking anyone's fiancé, cried Amy. If you don't leave on your own, you'll have only yourself to blame. Do you know who my father is? He'll put your kids in an orphanage and you in jail. He'll find something to incriminate you with. Do you understand? You thief of other people's men. Get out of here! One of the women from the ward got up from the bed and threatened Brenda. You're scaring our children. Leave her alone, or we'll throw you out upside down. Get out, you plucked chicken! Brenda didn't expect such a strong rebuff and backed away. Angry and in tears, she slammed the door and ran down the corridor, escorted by shocked looks from the nursing staff. The next day was a discharge day, and Oliver went to pick up Amy and the babies from the maternity hospital. The apartment for them was fully prepared and equipped with everything they needed. He bought flowers and treats for the nurses and walked toward Amy's ward with a joyful expression on his face. But Amy is gone, one of the women said. What do you mean she's gone? Where? Oliver's hands dropped in response to the unexpected news. A crazy blonde came here and insulted her in every possible way, threatened her with prison. That's why Amy ran away for good. Thankfully, we convinced her to take your bank card, or she would have been lost. So? And where to find her? The city is big. Oliver clutched his head. I think I can guess who's scared Amy. The women only shrugged their shoulders. Why did you hurt Amy? Who gave you the right to act like that? Oliver shouted at Brenda, and she had never seen him so furious before. She deserved it. From now on, she'll know how to look at other people's fiancés, Brenda said capriciously. Oh, come on. I was just trying to help her. Besides, you're not really my fiancé, huh? Have you forgotten that you left me? I'm poor and ugly to you. Oliver was indignant. And whose children then? Brenda asked snidely. How should I know? Exclaimed Oliver. It's none of my business but Amy's. Are you out of your mind to suspect me? I have never cheated on you. God, how glad I am that I didn't propose to you that day. Maybe it was for the best that my car was towed and I was late for the restaurant. I'm sorry, honey. Brenda replaced anger with grace. You know I have my reasons for acting like this too. Hormones play tricks on pregnant women. Are you pregnant? Oliver was surprised. Yes. I'm so nervous out because of it. I'm not happy with my behaviour either. Brenda lied without blushing. That's news, exclaimed Oliver. It's something to celebrate." "Cool. I want champagne. The most expensive," said Brenda. "Well, you can't have champagne, can you?" said Oliver. "Why not?" pouted the girl. "So alcohol is contraindicated for pregnant women." Oliver was surprised at such ignorance. "Exactly, and I completely forgot. See how good it is that I have you," mewed the schemer in a playfully affectionate manner. After spending the evening with Brenda, Oliver thought he was of course happy about the pregnancy, but now he didn't see Brenda as his wife. His gut feeling told him that she wasn't right for him, and if he married her, his life would turn into hell. This thought Oliver shared with his father and Winston, who was furious upon hearing it. "Just dare to leave Brenda. She is the daughter of my main business partner. You will marry her, and we will merge our capitals to become an influential corporation. And Brenda is expecting my grandson. If you don't do as I say, I'll disinherit you. And it's too late to retreat. You should have thought with your head. None of our ancestors ever abandoned their pregnant women, and you won't," Winston said. "All right, Dad, you've convinced me. Schedule the wedding in 3 months." Oliver sighed. "All right." The father calmed down. "It's a pity your mother didn't live to see that day." The next 2 months, Oliver secretly tried to find Amy, but his attempts were fruitless. She seemed to have disappeared off the face of the earth. Brenda became even more capricious, speculating about a pregnancy, and this sometimes drove Oliver to his wits' end. The only one rejoicing was Oliver's father, who pampered his future daughter-in-law in every possible way. But time passed, and Brenda's belly did not grow, which worried Oliver. He had already managed to study a ton of books on pregnancy and childbirth, while Brenda, to his surprise, showed no interest. "When do you go for the ultrasound?" he once asked his fiancée. "I'll go with you, I'm curious, and I have many questions for the doctor." "In a week," Brenda mumbled. In the evening, the pregnant woman called her friend, telling her about her problem. "What do I do? How can I tell Oliver that I'm not pregnant? He'll leave me right away," Brenda said into the phone. "Well, arrange a miscarriage. That's it. If you like, I can help you. I know a doctor who owes my husband a lot of money, so he'll provide you with a medical document, and you'll pay off the debt for him," advised the clever friend. "Wow, you're a genius," Brenda exclaimed. It seemed like she had been saved. Her mood immediately improved, and she poured herself an impressive glass of red wine to celebrate. And the next morning, the imaginary pregnant woman went to an immoral doctor who arranged everything just right. It was a done deal. The next step was to present the news of the miscarriage in a way that would frighten the gullible Oliver and finally break him out of his routine. Unaware, Oliver was sitting at his desk studying documents when the concerned secretary entered the room. "I'm sorry," she said, looking fearful. "They called from the hospital and said that your fiancée had a miscarriage. She is physically in satisfactory condition, but psychologically unstable. Brenda requests that you come for her immediately." "Call the driver immediately. I'm going to the hospital." "It'll be a long time before he gets home from lunch. I'd rather drive myself without him." Oliver rushed out of the office, not waiting for the elevator, and took the emergency stairs, jumping over the steps. How could this happen? My child is dead, and Brenda must be grieving for him. I must be near her, thought Oliver, and he burst out of the underground parking lot like the devil out of a snuff box, startling the guard. He didn't remember how he ended up on the highway. His SUV was speeding. Horrible images of a helpless Brenda and unfortunate babies flooded Oliver's brain. Tears of grief filled his eyes as he had dreamt so much of being a father. Oliver didn't notice that he had entered the oncoming lane, overtaking an old car driven by an elderly man. But the road was too slippery after the rain, and Oliver was too excited to notice the dangerous turn in time. Oliver woke up in a hospital bed. His head and back were in great pain, and a catheter was inserted in his arm, with a thin tube stretching from it. Nearby, a device was beeping annoyingly. Oliver tried to sit up, but his legs wouldn't obey him. In fact, he couldn't feel them at all. "Don't move, please," the nurse said quietly, then turned towards the corridor and shouted, "Doctor, he's awake." "Hello, Oliver." An elderly doctor in glasses looked at him. "Well, congratulations are in order. Looks like you were born under a lucky star. The car's dented, and you're relatively fine. You lucky fellow." The doctor attempted to joke. "What do you mean, relatively fine? I can't feel my legs," Oliver said fearfully. "Is this how it's supposed to be right now?" "Well, unfortunately, no," the doctor replied. "Your legs are non-functional due to the spinal injury. After the surgery, things should improve. However, the procedure can only be performed once your whole body has recovered. The main thing is that your arms, legs and head are in place. You know, sometimes racers are brought in pieces, but you're fine. The important thing now is not to worry and get plenty of rest," the doctor said before leaving and giving instructions to the nurse. Soon, Winston entered the room. His face looked aged and frightened, with a few grey hairs on his head. "Sonny, I thought I was going to lose you," he said with concern. "What happened? Why did you drive like that?" "I was informed that Brenda had a miscarriage. I was upset and rushed to her," replied Oliver, his chest aching at the thought of losing a child. "While you were in a coma, your Brenda found a new suitor and hung out with him in nightclubs. She doesn't seem to be grieving for her child. She may have manipulated us both. It seems that there was no pregnancy. My people visited the doctor who issued the miscarriage certificate under her orders. Brenda was after the money, not you. I have cut all ties with their family. I don't know if her father won't harm me in business as well. She's a liar. She hasn't even apologized or visited you once. It's because of her that you're here. And because of her, you may be confined to a wheelchair forever." Saying this, the upset man hung his head in helplessness. Hearing these words, Oliver lost all interest in life. His eyes dimmed and his face turned to stone. "Why are there people around who don't understand me?" Oliver thought. "Everyone wants something from me." Oliver now didn't care where he was, what he had, or what was happening to him at all. He had no interest in his health and flatly refused procedures, including therapeutic exercises and manual therapy. Oliver remained silent and unresponsive to everyone. Even when he was brought home, where close friends and colleagues gathered to welcome him, he showed no interest. He was sitting in his wheelchair with a blank expression. A month passed, and it was time to prepare for the operation. Oliver's father, of course, was more worried about his son's fate than anyone else. "The doctors say you should do special exercises to help with the post-operative complications," Winston said. "I don't want to. I don't see the point. I'll do just fine. Nobody needed me healthy, and much less now," Oliver replied in a detached manner. The father noticed how depressed Oliver was. He hired the best psychotherapists for him, but they all failed. Oliver simply refused to communicate with them. Despite trying more than 10 professional nurses with medical education in their house, none of them stayed for more than a week. Oliver's temper had completely deteriorated. No one could tolerate his caustic remarks and refusal to cooperate with them for long. "Take care of your son yourself," shouted the last nurse, who had been provoked by Oliver. "You've gone completely crazy. I'm not your slave. I'm not going to tolerate this kind of treatment." And with that she left, slamming the door. Word quickly spread among the narrow circles of medical workers about the difficult patient, and no one else wanted to take care of Oliver, regardless of the price. His father and the elderly housekeeper, who already had many responsibilities at home, had to take on the task themselves. Desperate to find a suitable nurse, Oliver's father placed an ad in the local newspaper. People of all kinds responded to the job offer: elderly women who needed care themselves, young women with heavy makeup, drunkards barely able to stand, and even a homeless man. But one day there was a soft knock at their door. Standing on the threshold was a modest and pretty woman who immediately inspired trust in Winston. He invited her inside. "Hello, are you looking for a nurse for a sick person?" she asked. "I don't have medical education, but I took care of my grandmother. I can administer injections and perform hygienic procedures, feed the patient, take them for walks, and keep them entertained. However, I won't be able to stay overnight due to family reasons. Here's my resume. Would you like to take a look?" "First of all, I'm so glad you responded. Come, I'd like you to meet my son. He's 30 years old, a good man, but he's been very nervous because of his illness," said the elderly man, so relieved to see the caregiver that he forgot to ask her name. He knocked on the door to Oliver's room. "Who's there? What do you want?" came an angry voice in reply. The man and the supposed-to-be caregiver entered the room. When Oliver saw her, he first froze with shock. "Amy, you've come. I've been looking for you. Where have you been?" Oliver exclaimed. Amy gasped and ran up to Oliver. She knelt in front of his chair and began touching his motionless legs. "Oliver, what happened? Can't you walk? How is this possible?" she exclaimed, crying. When Oliver's father saw his son's face light up with happiness, he sighed with relief. "And how do you two know each other so well?" he asked. "It's a long story, Dad." Oliver finally smiled. "I'll tell you sometime later." For the first time in 2 months, Oliver was upbeat. His father decided not to disturb them and went to his study, ordering a celebratory dinner for the evening. What a splendid table! Amy marvelled as she entered the dining room in the evening with Oliver, who was cheerfully spinning the wheels of his wheelchair. "That's what we wanted to show. How happy we are to have you, Amy," Winston said, feeling more cheerful. "Thank you, it's a pleasure," Amy replied. "Now, I'm not even comfortable taking money from you now." "You go ahead, don't worry about that," Oliver interrupted. "You need the money. Every labour should be paid for, especially such labour." "Okay, I won't argue. Just don't worry, Oliver," Amy said. "You can't worry before the operation, or have you forgotten what we agreed on?" "So you finally agreed to the operation?" Winston asked excitedly. "Of course, I need to get back on my feet quickly," Oliver said, looking at Amy, who tightly held his hand. Winston realised that his son liked Amy, and that she had a positive influence on him, calming him down. "A little infatuation hasn't hurt anyone yet," he thought, and invited everyone to the table. While Oliver was occupied with his health, Brenda managed to get rid of another suitor whom she deemed unworthy of her. Upon learning that Oliver was slowly recovering, and that Amy, whom she detested, was helping him, the fickle and jealous woman decided to annoy them. She grabbed a pen, a piece of paper, and wrote an anonymous letter claiming that Amy was a dangerous adventurer and a gold digger who intentionally got pregnant with Oliver a year ago and gave birth to twins. The letter also accused Amy of planning to take over the house and the entire business, and intending to send Winston himself to a nursing home. The next morning, the letter was sent to Oliver's father by a courier. After reading the anonymous letter, Winston became furious. He stormed into Amy's room. "Is it true that you gave birth to children in Oliver's car?" he angrily asked, his eyes flashing. "Yes, that's what happened," Amy calmly replied. "Maybe you also have feelings for my son?" he sarcastically asked. Yes, she honestly admitted, but Oliver doesn't know anything about it. Is that why you came here, to marry him and take him for yourself? Winston shouted. I don't want anything from you. I just came here to work, Amy exclaimed. Get out of my house! Winston pointed to the door. Amy was not allowed to say goodbye to Oliver, and she had no choice but to leave the house. An hour later, when Oliver arrived in a wheelchair for breakfast, he asked, Where's Amy? I kicked her out, the father said. Why do you need this beggar? I don't want us to be associated with her. What have you done? Oliver exclaimed. I've just found my real soulmate, and you have no right to control other people's destinies. You once promised me Brenda as my wife, and what happened? Oliver felt offended and left for the garden near the house, while his father remained sitting at the table, frowning and rereading the letter. An hour later, he went to apologize to his son and admit that he might have believed the anonymous letter in vain, but he couldn't find him outside. What have you done, you old fool? Winston clutched his head and began to cry. In desperation, he found Amy's resume, which included her address, and went there. The house was on the outskirts of the city. Winston knocked on the door, and the elderly landlady of the apartment opened it, immediately recognizing who was standing in front of her. She silently nodded towards the room where Amy and the children were living. What do you need? The young woman asked when she saw the intruder enter. Forgive me, Amy. I lost my temper. I received an anonymous letter with all sorts of nasty things written about you, and I lost control. I insulted you without understanding. Well, you gave birth to the babies to my son, and it's really none of my business. My job is to provide a decent life for my grandsons. Come back with the kids, please. Okay, she smiled. But these are not your grandchildren. They are from my fiancé, who abandoned me a long time ago. As for Oliver, he just helped me when I needed it badly. You've raised a decent man. Thank you for this. When Amy shared the details of her life, Winston felt very ashamed. And who was taking care of the babies while you were working for us? He asked. Mrs. Muirhead, the landlady of the apartment, Amy said. I am truly grateful to her. I see. Amy, let's not remember the past, but I really ask you to come back, and you should do it with the children. However, I have some not-so-good news. Oliver disappeared. He went somewhere in a wheelchair and hasn't returned. I thought he was here with you, Winston said. How did he disappear? Amy asked anxiously. We need to find him. What if something happened to him? What if he needs help? We must start searching right away, and the babies will stay with Mrs. Muirhead for now. But they didn't have time to leave the driveway when they saw a lone man in a wheelchair approaching them. Amy was the first to recognize him and rushed to meet him. How you scared us, Oliver, she exclaimed. How can you be such a slob? You're about to have an operation. You almost gave your father a heart attack, Winston said reproachfully. You're crazy. Amy, hold me, or I'll give him a head slap. Oliver laughed loudly and joyfully. He realized that his two favourite people had found a common language, and it made him happy. Well, I want to go home, he said. Where are little Oliver and Tom? They're at my place. They are being looked after, don't worry, Amy reassured him. When they entered the house in a noisy company, the housekeeper clapped her hands. She was glad to see that the gloomy house was alive again. For the little ones and Amy, the brightest and warmest room was allocated. Oliver personally supervised all the preparations, and the father rejoiced at his son's transformation. When evening came and Oliver was playing with the children, Amy quietly approached Winston and sat down beside him. Thank you for everything, she whispered quietly. I'll tell you a secret. Oliver proposed marriage to me. I said yes. Oh, what news? Call me Dad, Amy, said Winston affectionately. And in a few months, Oliver was already moving around the house, though with a stick, but on his own 2 feet. The operation was successful, and the problem was not as serious as the doctors had feared, so Oliver recovered rapidly. Oliver and Amy had a wedding night in Winston's mansion. They didn't invite many guests, only close friends and relatives. The young couple was happy, and good wishes and loud toasts were sent to them. In the midst of the festivities, Brenda showed up uninvited. She was no longer that daring beauty, but looked faded and devastated. Everyone fell silent, expecting a trick from the self-loving girl. "What insolence!" was heard from all sides. "How dare she come here?" "I apologize for disturbing your idyll," Brenda said, lowering her head. "I came to apologize to all of you. Oliver, Amy, I sincerely wish you happiness. Forgive me if you can." In her hands, Brenda held a small, neatly wrapped gift, which she placed with trembling hands with the rest of the presents. Oliver looked disdainfully at her offering. He wanted nothing from the one who had caused his family so much pain and distress. The silence was interrupted by Amy. She was the one who knew better than anyone what it was like to be a social outcast. "Brenda, I don't know about Oliver, but I forgive you. It's our happy day and I don't want to ruin it. Thank you for the gift. It takes courage to do that and admit your mistakes. Come in, make yourself at home," Amy said and smiled. Brenda, not expecting such a welcome, started to cry to the point of tears, as if something in her soul had burst and the pent-up shame and grief had burst through. It was clear that something terrible had happened in her life. Amy came out from behind the table and put her arms around her, pulling her close. "Come on, you're going to tell Oliver and me everything," she said quietly, and pulled Brenda along with her. The crying woman didn't resist. She obediently followed Amy, realizing that she could get help here. As much as Oliver didn't want to see his ex-fiancée, her state of mind shook him, and he agreed to listen to her. After drinking some water, Brenda began to pour out her soul. "My father passed away suddenly from a heart attack a month ago," she began, "leaving my mother and me all alone. The company's business began to deteriorate, and investors were hesitant to work with us. But then a man occurred on my way, and I trusted him. He took care of me well, claiming to be a top manager from a large company. He drove an expensive car and showered me with luxurious gifts. My mother adored him and wanted him as a son-in-law. Our house was always open to him. Then David suggested selling the company and investing my father's money in cryptocurrency. He promised that the value was increasing rapidly, and we could make a lot of money from the difference in resale. I transferred all the money to the specified wallet, just as he instructed. I trusted him completely. But the next day, David disappeared. He checked out of the hotel, and his phone was unreachable. That's when we realized David was a fraud. It turned out that even his suit was rented. He robbed us without mercy, and my mother and I had our house taken away for debts. I still have a little money left in my account, but it's running out quickly. No one will hire me because they say I lack experience." Brenda showed Amy a photo of her suitor on her phone. "I can't believe it," Amy exclaimed. "This is my ex-fiancé, David, who took the rest of my money and ran away when he found out I was pregnant. What a coincidence. Brenda, we are now friends in misfortune. By the way, I know where he might be hiding. I overheard the address he gave to the taxi driver once. Let's try to get a refund. But for now, stay here with your mum. I think we have enough space for everyone. Maybe we can even become friends. I don't have any real girlfriends. Brenda said, "and trust me, I've changed. I know what it's like to be broke and have rich people look down on you. I was foolish to act that way." "You certainly were," Amy smiled, and they laughed together. They chatted for a long time, and it was the start of their strong friendship between them. In the morning, Brenda filed a police report against David, attaching the fraudster's photo and bank statements as evidence. Oliver, on the other hand, hired an experienced detective. Together they traced David's trail just in time, as he was already targeting his next victim. Brenda's money was recovered, and she was overjoyed. She used the funds to buy a small, cosy house for herself and her mother, although it was much more modest than before. Oliver was glad to see his former fiancée's transformation. He no longer held any resentment towards her. Brenda had truly changed, becoming softer in character and easier to communicate with. In addition, Amy had a positive influence on her. One day, when Oliver hardly entered the doorstep of the house, Caesar rushed towards him at full speed. He had a note hanging from his neck. The dog wagged his tail happily and spun around, making it difficult for Oliver to retrieve the message. When Oliver unfolded the note, he saw the cherished words that every loving man dreams of. "You will soon be a father." In the dining room, a big family awaited him. A happy father, a wife, 2 sons, a faithful dog, and someone else, who everyone was eagerly anticipating.